I play a lot of horror games, and I do my best to keep up with the latest trends and popular games going around. I rarely make videos about them. My horror experiences still seem to be stuck behind the year 2008, but I do try to keep up with them. Then last year there came Lethal Company. I stumbled upon it because a streamer I watch routinely was playing it with friends, and it got me intrigued. It was fun, it was funny, and it was horror, certainly. Not what I would call hardcore horror, but neither is it quite entry-level horror either. It's a pretty good balance, offering higher tension and fear than your average game, but not so much that the average person who doesn't play spooky stuff will be put off. The more I watched others play it, and the more I played it myself, the more I realized this is a smart, fun, incredibly well-designed game, a near perfect package in every way. It got to the point I felt I had to talk about it, because I just had so many thoughts about it. It's a game every horror game developer should be taking notes on, because it is a horror game, even if most video highlights the funny.
Help! Listen, help! That's a negative, over.
Much more than the scares.
Oh, what's that? Oh, be gone, beast.
And it's definitely the best horror comedy to come out in years.
Get off your fucking head! Hold on! What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?
Let's explore what Lethal Company is, how it works, and what I think other horror games should take a lesson from. And why it is in fact so funny.
Jesus!
Throughout this video, you will see clips from other prominent streamers on YouTube. Those streamers will have their names on screen and their channels linked in the description, and those clips are completely unedited on my end. All the editing is original to the source video. In Lethal Company, you and your friends, should you choose to play multiplayer, are employees for the company. You work in outer space, and your job is to collect scrap, materials left behind on abandoned planets called moons. These moons, however, aren't empty. They have environmental dangers, and monstrous ones.
It's easy.
And you have a limited time to collect a certain amount of scrap. Once you've collected it, you must take it to the company planet, selling it to the eldritch entity which feeds upon the refuse of this abandoned world.
Yeah, we have brought you some good items, sir.
Yeah, do you like the selection?
Kindly.
Ah!
And if you reach your quota, you win. Fail to reach the quota in time, and you will unfortunately be fired.
Welcome to
Why did we get brought back to life for this?
The company.
And by fired, I mean violently fired out of the airlock into outer space. One of the most obvious standout features of Lethal Company's gameplay is its sound design.
Hello?
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 Hold on, I can open this door. Hold on, I can go a little bit further. Hello?
Yeah, hello?
I can still hear you. Hello? Yeah, this is actually amazing. Hey! Don't run!
The game uses proximity chat in a unique way. Sound moves and grows close or far based on distance from the player. People sound like they're far away when they are.
I have a key! I have a key!
Monsters sound close by when they're right behind you.
Help me.
Sound mimics life in this game. Underwater,
No, Sarah, don't try to.
or being strangled by a monster,
It's on you!
makes you sound muffled. Doors and sudden death can cut your voice off automatically, and the dead can't talk to the living.
Ah. So I found a turret.
That style of chat is definitely the bedrock upon which both the horror and comedy of this game is built. There is nothing like listening to a person's voice fade out as you realize they are getting too far away and you've been left alone, or hearing a sudden scream cut out for reasons you don't know. These dramatic moments can be horrifying or hilarious.
Describe your role in a team dynamic.
I think Ben died. Oh my god.
Count.
Put it down. Put it down.
And they're built on the fact that sound mimics life.
What?
It allows for real dramatic pauses and perfectly timed cutoffs.
Not that hard.
No! No! No, Craig! Is he okay? Is he okay?
For fading noise and sudden screams cutting into the silence. Every multiplayer horror game going forward is going to have to follow this style of game, or they're never going to be able to match up. The experience is just too superior to everything else. The game's not a heavily demanding game visually. It's pretty blocky and old-fashioned, which works well with the overall aesthetic. Not only does it make the game easy to access for folks no matter the strength of their PC, it's far more unique in an artistic sense. It's easily recognizable as Lethal Company. You see a screenshot, you see that spacesuit, you know what the game is, if you know the game. It works for promoting the game, and it is simply more appealing as a style, when so many games nowadays are striving for soulless, pure realism that becomes indistinguishable from one another. Compared to games like Phasmophobia, or The Lunch Lady, or dozens of games like it, the monsters of Lethal Company are incredible and intelligently diversified. The man behind this game knows his horror, and especially his horror stories, from creepypastas that are most popular to tropes that tend to appear most often. There are more than a dozen monsters that can appear in this game, in multiple combinations and randomized locations, each with a different method of hunting you, different behavior, and different ways of defeating them. First, there are monsters designed around the senses. Multiple creatures can only hunt you based on a singular sense and lack other ways of finding you. There are blind dogs that can't see, but boy can they hear you, and you'll learn that the hard way if you aren't quiet.
Oh, that's how he'll know that we're over.
What was that?
Oh, that's bad. Is what
Wait,
that is.
that wasn't the
The
boss.
door's gonna open on its own. You're gonna have to close it.
How do I close it? How do I close it?
There are giants who cannot hear you, but can see you, so you have to learn to navigate carefully and stealthily around them. Others are the opposite. Two monsters have to be seen to be combated in some way. The coil heads are a don't look away creature, popular in creepypastas and of course Doctor Who, which means you have to navigate with the creature in your sight at all times, or the sight of your teammates.
I know what this is.
The other, the Bracken, works in a similar fashion. You can't stare at it, but you can't avoid it either.
Oh, get back!
Fucking Bracken!
Looking at it, then quickly looking away will keep it at a distance. A third monster, far less dangerous than these two, will be intimidated if you stare it down, unless it is part of a crowd that can outnumber you. Then there are the creatures who linger in hidden spaces. The snare fleas tend to be overhead and will drop down on players, suffocating them in a certain amount of time.
Mark, look up. It's waiting on the ceiling.
Oh.
If you don't escape right away or have a friend smack you in the head, you're dead. The spiders also linger on walls up above. If you touch their webs, they will hunt you, often from above. Then there are the monsters that mess with you, like Ghost Girl. She's a Sadako-style haunting spirit who is only seen by one person at a time. If you see it, your friends can't.
Seeing monsters that's not there.
Everyone point and laugh. No!
Everybody point at him and laugh. Laugh at Moo. Everybody. Oh, fuck! Oh, fuck!
Then there's mimics, your teammates, but not quite. A mask can transform your team into these monsters, or they can randomly spawn on the map.
How do I know you're not a mimic?
Not only do they have a teammate silhouette, which can be tricky at a distance, but the game can use your audio against you by replaying sound bites of your teammates talking. There are timed monsters. The jester looks like a wind-up music box and will begin to play his song before he starts attacking. You have about 30 seconds to get out when that happens, or it will be on you in an instant. The more harmless creatures include the I call them slimes. They're slow, they're pretty big, and if they get into a bad position on the map, they can become impossible obstacles, or slow you down enough something else can get you. The hoarder bugs are little cockroach-looking guys who mostly leave you alone, but they steal your stuff inside the map.
Hey, they got the beer, they got the party going.
They got the fucking balls.
Oh look, he was late. He was late to the party. This is our loot.
On the outside map, the vulture guys will do the same thing, meaning your stuff is never safe until it's on the ship. If you try to take stuff back from the little guys, they will try to get you, but they're mostly harmless.
Oh, 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 ah!
The spore dudes, they're literally harmless. They look terrible, but they do almost nothing. They're very hard to aggro, they just look that way to scare you. There are an incredible number of monsters in this game, and each and every one has unique qualities. Since you can rarely know what will spawn where in this game, you have to enter the map fully prepared to face anything. You must be aware of what you see and what sees you, what is listening, what you're stepping on.
Wait, what?
What's overhead, what's around the corner, what you can hear. It's an insane amount of variety that means you can never really sit back and relax. I love Silent Hill, but when you consider those games, especially the early ones, monster combat was pretty basic. Hit thing, it will die. The behaviors vary somewhat. You had things that were underfoot and things that hang overhead, things that fly. But a game like this basically devolves combat into avoid thing or hit the thing. While it does use a flashlight mechanic to add some depth to it, monsters can see you better if you can see them. The improvements made upon this kind of system in a game like Lethal Company gives me such a rush of enjoyment at the mere thought of a similar system in a game like Silent Hill. Imagine this amount of variety and tension in a game that's meant to be far grittier, darker, and scarier. It would be a delicious nightmare. Monsters are such a huge part of horror gaming, and rarely have I seen someone really consider how and what makes a monster good on this level, how to create a combination of them that feels dangerous and overwhelming. A game like Resident Evil relies on a small amount of variety and a huge mass of enemies. You still defeat them all the same way: guns, grenades, knives. Gameplay doesn't change the same way it does in Lethal, where your reaction to a monster will be very different depending on if it's a spider or a blind dog. Lurkers are an early example of a similar kind of gameplay, but the style of Resident Evil just lends itself more to shoot the thing. Lethal does not allow you that kind of overwhelming strength to survive. You have to play by the monster's rules. Many games rely on just one monster. One of my favorite games recently has been Amnesia Bunker, a fantastic horror experience which I've seen many longtime horror nerds fall in love with. It has one monster who has basic ways of finding you, sight and sound. It's pretty intense and intimidating, but playing Lethals made me pine for an Amnesia in this style. Instead of one great monster that hunts you, many smaller ones who hunt in different styles invites a far more paranoid style of play. In Amnesia, I can get comfortable with my monster. I can learn how he sees me. I can learn how best to move and explore without being perceived. When you have that great a variety of creature and gameplay style, however, it becomes much harder to just learn and adapt to the creature. There's too many, with too many ways of finding you. That's not the only way the game makes things difficult, of course. Beyond monsters, the environment itself is a threat, like in any good horror game. It too includes an amount of variety and unpredictability that makes the player feel tension at every single moment. The ground is a threat. For one, I mentioned the sandworms, but there's also quicksand.
We're going right. Oh, what a
Mark seems to be sinking
I'm
into
sorry.
something. Oh, he found quicksand and is dead.
More common when the weather is rainy on that planet. If it's stormy and you have a metal object on your person, watch out. The lightning will kill you.
Captain! Captain, what happened? What the fuck?
There's also bodies of water, and though you can swim, if you stay under too long, you will drown, and planets can flood in certain weather conditions. Distance and fall damage are also problems, not just in trying to navigate the landscape, but even when you're in places you think are safe, like this bridge. Looks like a great bridge. I'm sure nothing bad will happen if you walk on it. And let's not forget the bees! Inside the map, the randomly generated scenery means you can never fully memorize the layout or know exactly where you are, though you may start noticing patterns. It's not a logical map. It's not a Resident Evil mansion with a parlor and a dining room and a secret basement. There are random pits to nothingness, and staircases to nowhere, and random dead ends everywhere. And they make trying to escape things almost impossible. The inside maps also have landmines, which detonate as soon as you step off them. Turrets, which have a perfectly timed pause just before they start shooting you.
I got shot.
Pipes that spray mist, obscuring sight until you fix them. Locked doors that have to be unlocked with keys, if you're lucky enough to have found one. And radiation. If you remove this object, you'll make the area radiated. I'm sure nothing bad happens when you do that. Between all the obstacles, the game creates a world in which you must be cautious about your every step, constantly aware of what is beneath your feet. You have to be careful about sight, since so many things obscure it, and you may not be able to see something that can see you. And you can't turn corners wildly. Even if you don't hear a monster around, those turrets can be anywhere. Even if you are absolutely sure there's no creature, you cannot feel safe. The very map works against you. Every horror game has worked towards creating this kind of tension and fear. The original Silent Hill is great at creating a sense of misdirection and confusion in its maps. They change and shift, they can't be predicted, they have sudden drops and dead ends. Lethal takes that and ups the ante by making its traps randomized and its building maps random, meaning no amount of playing can make you a master. Imagine a game like Fatal Frame, in which the mansion you were exploring was different every time you played. It would be overwhelming. So many of my horror experiences become routine because of how familiar I become with them, but Lethal has made that much harder. Randomization isn't a universally desired feature. It can take away from the ability to build a narrative into a level, or at least makes it much harder. But for Lethal, a game whose gameplay is the narrative, that randomness of the maps adds to the sense of absurdity and the horror of the experience. People are dying to collect trash from buildings that have no purpose to feed a monstrous corporate entity. It fits the feeling of the game and increases the fear. A win-win. And I can imagine how such a scenario could be adapted to a story-heavy game like Silent Hill or Fatal Frame. Merely by creating hubs of level locations the player must navigate to between randomized areas and sets that connect them, making the journey to these locations different every time. For instance, take the Midwich level from Silent Hill 1. Make the permanent sets the piano room, the science lab, etc. The school hallways and staircases could be random, making each playthrough a different experience. A talented team could definitely make it work. So how do you survive in this random Lethal Company world? By being lucky and really careful. On the player side of things, there are restrictions and mechanics that make it tougher to, like the existence of a stamina meter.
We do have stamina from the company.
In addition, you have limited sight and sound. You can't see in the dark, and you can't hear things until you're close enough that hearing them is a very bad sign. You can purchase items that help, like the flashlight to help you see, the radio.
What's going on with that radio?
The radio to speak with friends, and a shovel to attack enemies. These are the most basic pieces of equipment, but there are others. But all of these cost money, and you start with a small limited amount. But most of what you can buy is superfluous anyway, highlighting the fact that advancement in this game is kind of a joke. You can buy a shower, or a toilet. None of these things do anything to promote gameplay, they just exist in your spaceship. Money beyond a certain point is almost worthless. Your job is to collect items to sell, and any items you bring with you take up space for those items you can collect. Your inventory is just 4 slots, and big items can take multiple. You also have a time limit. Even if you aren't on the ship, it will leave at midnight. If you don't make it back, you're screwed. You lose everything you found in the level. If you all die, the ship leaves, and you lose everything. If you get back, sell your loot, and don't make quota, you die and lose everything. Very little of what you need to know to survive the game is directly told to you. You can probably find it. There is a manual, and there is a terminal that fills with information as you scan monsters. But most people learn this game by experience, often with others who may be new as well, or are experienced players sharing the game with first-timers. I've watched people streaming this game and playing with friends, teaching each other the stories of the monsters. It's incredible to see, a kind of folklore in real time, as none of them seem to rely on the in-game methods to learn. They listen to the stories, and those stories come from the way other players have experienced the monsters themselves, how they think they were able to combat that enemy. This includes naming the creatures, and I've heard dozens of variations.
Did you kill Flat? I don't actually know what they're called.
I didn't
I think I just called them Treeple.
Treeple?
No, I think
It's in-game horror folklore, and it's beautiful. All these incredibly detailed restrictions, from the traps in the environment, to the dozens or so styles of monsters, to the changing weather and eclipse setting, to the restrictions on player movement and equipment, create a scenario that is tight, challenging, and never repetitive. And all these dangers, in spite of their limitations and frustrations, never become overly challenging or frustrating because of the way they're designed. The game is short. A level lasts 15 minutes if you stay the whole time and nobody dies. Within a half hour at most, you'll be leaving the planet and coming to another one, creating an entirely fresh scenario with new monsters, new environments, and new challenges. And if you lose, oh well. Losing and winning in this game are almost the same. The experience of playing does not change. What items can be bought to improve the experience aren't prohibitively expensive, and they aren't necessary. In Back 4 Blood, you need good ammo and gear to survive, or else you aren't going to play much of the game. Lose and you won't get to new levels or earn EXP. Lethal Company barely rewards winning or punishes losing. If you win, you get to play more of the game. If you lose, you get to play more of the game. What do you get if you win? You get to keep what equipment you have on the ship, whatever money you have extra, and you get a new goal to reach. You can also earn EXP. And what does that do? It changes your name tag. You can go from intern to part-timer to employee. Does that affect anything? I don't think so. It's a name tag. There's almost no reward to winning. With more money, you can purchase the route to more difficult moons, but these aren't unlocked as new levels. You have to spend the money every time. It's not like a game like Amnesia that involves advancing through stages or beating bosses. You aren't making progress, you just play. If you win, you keep playing. If you lose your upgrades, but you can keep playing. The difference between Lethal Company and other multiplayer horror games comes down to these elements, a unique combination of features that just makes Lethal Company more playable and accessible. It has greater variety in gameplay, a shorter playtime, a less demanding play style. By comparison, a game like Phasmophobia, while certainly fun, has its limitations. The idea is to guess what type of ghost is in the house. Behaviors of ghosts and how they kill you are pretty much the same, however. As a viewer, it often feels like players are hunting the same ghost each time, who always has those same hands reaching out to steal your eyeballs. The puzzle element of the game, one of its defining features, stands against it solely because it's not something every player will be interested in or capable of. A game like Lethal Company works because it requires so little of the player. Jump in, fuck around, and find out. No matter how much you screw up or fail, you can still play the game. In a game like Among Us or Phasmophobia, failure can be far more stressful and disappointing. It can cost your team a victory, it can turn other players against you, and you might not be able to unlock new levels or features. Lethal Company is less stressful and has far less stakes. I've seen people I watch stream routinely, at times very competitive people, who just don't engage with Lethal Company in the same way. People kill each other for a laugh.
Oh, you're just fine now.
They play pranks, they pull jokes, they commit to the bit, and forget about playing the game completely. In any other game, this kind of behavior from teammates would at least piss off that one guy. But in Lethal Company, nobody really seems to care. The stakes are so low already. Win or lose, you just keep playing. The game isn't just horror, of course. It's comedy. It's parody, specifically of late-stage space capitalism. The scrap you collect is considered more valuable than you, and you can sell your own friends' dead bodies for a measly $5. Everyone is quite literally a faceless employee, and an actual evil tentacle monster appears to be the company's CEO, much like Activision Blizzard. The critiques here are pretty obvious surface-level stuff, but done in a really fun way, and lots of people seem to play into the bit of being devoted employees.
We love the company. The company. Even if we die, we love the company.
This is one of the best designed games of all time. One of the funniest and most frightening, all at once. And it was definitely designed to be both, because the way the game is built just naturally works towards both goals. Look at the little details, and you can see just how much the designer thought about how the game would work. That spaceship that you can use as a safety zone and means of escape, it's not flat on the ground. It's elevated. You have to jump on a platform or scale a ladder to get to it. If your hands are full, you won't be able to use the ladder. You have to jump. If you're running away from something, it only takes a second to take a poorly aimed jump, miss the landing, and end up eating shit right at the front doors of the ship. That ship isn't a safe zone either. Monsters can and will get you there. There's a door that locks them out, but it has a battery, and it will run out, and open automatically. The game is designed to let you mess with your own people. Once you're dead, you can watch other players and see how poorly they're doing. While dead, you can vote on whether or not to make the spaceship leave right away, meaning you can abandon your living comrades for dead for a laugh. There's literally no benefit to doing this. That ship that brings flashlights and gear, it can land on you and squish you to death. Items you buy, such as the ladder, it can also kill you. There's the jetpack, the most useless piece of equipment in the game. It kills. That's all it does. I mentioned earlier that there are mimics in this game. They can spawn at random, or they can be your actual teammates. How does that happen? One way it can happen is if the person picks up a mask. If they hold it out for too long, they will put it on, and it allows them the choice to put it on purpose. One of the most common items in the game, the air horn. Remember how I said there were monsters that would hunt you by sound? Yeah, you can imagine how that plays out every single time. What are the weapons in this game? There are shovels, but there are also signs, stop signs, and yield signs. Yes, one of the common techniques of this game is smacking an enemy or ally with a sign that says stop. This game understands people and how people play multiplayer games. They want to mess around, to be silly and dance and emote. They want to be able to screw over their friends. The genius of it is just how well it melds the two opposite desires, to be frightened and to laugh. How hard a balance that is to create, especially in a personal experience. A movie or book you experience secondhand can be far easier to feel both amusement and horror from because you are divorced from it. It's far harder to laugh when you yourself are afraid for your in-game safety. And it is just so funny. It's not just the game itself, it's how the game encourages the player to indulge in the way they play. By being so open, so easy to step into, and diverse in possibilities, it creates a stage for play. Compare it to a game with levels, with bosses, with heavy game design, where movement and play are restricted by what you've unlocked and what you've beaten. Everybody can go out and explore the moon, enter the base together, and experience Lethal Company in its entirety, without unlocking or defeating anything. While the timer is going, you can do what you want. Want to mess around and have a ladder off?
Oh.
The game does not require you to play a certain way, and though you may be punished by the end of a run, That consequence is small by comparison. You can go right back to exploring moons and messing around. That's why people prank each other so often in this game. Lethal Company feels like a modern way of playing on the schoolyard playground. How everyone is in the same little set piece, fooling around in the same ways, playing silly little games they made up that don't have real consequences because the point is to play, not to win. It feels like telling spooky stories around a summer campfire, the way folks name the monsters, learn how to combat them through storytelling, tell their friends what they did and what to avoid, how they shout and scream at one another trying to explain what horrors await. I don't think this game is going anywhere anytime soon. There's too much variety, it has too much appeal, it strikes at what people really become passionate for, things that scare them, and things that make them laugh. It's what we as people crave most, to feel something. I suppose the only way to end this is to say, hey, wanna join the company?